Talking about James Madison, that the history of American protests going back to 1773 and the Tea Party. You wrote that James Madison, the genius of the Constitution, envisioned a system of government that would embrace dissent and offer malcontents the hope, however distant, that they can get what they want by working through it. Take some of the recent examples. Take Code Pink, take Occupy, and take other movements recently. Do you think these organizations are getting what they want by using the tactics they are?
I think nobody in the United States ever gets all they want, and activists are always, always, always disappointed. But the challenge is, can you do better working within the system or working outside the system? And one of the really interesting things about Code Pink is at the Democratic National Convention, Code Pink was there to remember about the war. Lots of Democratic activists and people on the left had voted for President Obama, who had promised to close Guantanamo and end the wars. And both of those wars were still going on. Code Pink remembered. That's what the kind of radical fringe of what most movements does. Similarly, the Tea Party activists took to the streets and then decided that the best way to be effective is to invest in the electoral campaigns of 2010. And they made huge gains. But I bet some of them will call up today and talk about how they haven't gotten what they wanted from making those inroads in electoral politics. And again, it's this terrible balancing act, because when you get inside the doors, when you get to testify before Congress, there's this promise, there's this temptation that maybe this is the most effective way to pursue your interests. And it's never enough.
Professor David Meyer with us for the next hour to talk about political groups, protest groups, social groups, and their effect on the political conversation. What's the place? And that's what we're asking you too. What's the place of these movements in the political conversation? We go first to Iron River, Michigan, and this is Jack on our Republican line.
Hello.
Hi, Jack. You're on the air.
Thank you. I was just going to make a comment that this Pink group, I do appreciate freedom of speech, but I don't appreciate getting the facts wrong when trying to present a point. Two of the biggest shootings in America were done with hunting rifles and bolt action. The shooting of the tower on the college and the President Kennedy. There are less than 15% of the shootings today done with the so-called assault-style weapons.
Jack, I'm going to let you go there and broaden out the question to Professor Meyer to the gun control debate, the issue of the gun violence.
Political spectrum. And one of the reasons that activists get frustrated is they mobilize their opponents. So gun control activists, people who want limits on assault weapons or large magazines, are going to take to the streets, they're going to protest, they're going to lobby Congress, but they're not the only ones trying to influence government. And what winds up happening is that activists fight to get a stalemate a lot of the time. The immigration activists and the anti-immigration activists over the last 5 years have fought each other to a stalemate. And both sides are completely frustrated because they can't get what they want by acting earnestly in good faith and mobilizing lots of support. There's another interesting thing that Jack raised, which is that what's true? Activists say stuff, stories circulate in activist circles, and increasingly it's very, very easy to get information only from people who already agree with you. And lots of misconceptions circulate on both the left and the right. That's a scary thing about contemporary America.
Back to the group Code Pink, and you're seeing some video on the screen. One of the ways that they've been effective in getting into congressional hearings is they, in some cases, draw response from members, as in the case here with the late Senator Byrd in a hearing with Defense Secretary Robert Gates. Here it is.
I would tell you that the number of troops would be a small fraction of those that are in the country today. And I think no one really knows what the duration of their presence there would be. It would depend. I suspect the contracts operate under the Coalition Provisional Order 17, which says that non-Iraqi contractors are immune from Iraqi legal processes if their acts are pursuant to the terms and conditions of their contract.
My upbringing tells me that sexual activity outside the bonds of marriage between a man and a woman is immoral. That's what I was taught. That is what I believe. It is where I.
This hearing is adjourned. Clear the room. Clear the room.
I don't need any lectures from you.
Let us clear the room. Let us clear the room. We've had enough of this. Clear the room. Clear the room. Clear the room. Clear the room. That's enough of this. I've tolerated all I can stand. I stopped it before you were born. I said, stop it before you were ever born. I said, don't go into it before you were ever born. Get out of this place. Here, let's go.
From 2007, back to our conversation on protest groups, social groups, and their role in the political conversation. War on Ohio is next. This is David on our Democrat side.
Hi. Yes, good evening. Thanks for C-SPAN. I appreciate Code Pink. I think that they may go a little too far, but a lot of us who are individuals and don't belong to any necessary group find that when we contact our senators and representatives, we don't feel like our voices are really that powerful. We feel like we're just an irritant and something they tolerate. I call my congressman in reference to shooting where two police officers stopped this person who ran a stop sign. He pulled an AK-47 and blasted their car. Luckily, they weren't killed and they returned fire. But the person in the congressman's office said, oh, that's outside his district. He doesn't have anything to do with that. They weren't willing to connect it to the problem of assault weapons. They just told me, oh, that's not in his district.
So back to David, back to groups like Code Pink. So you're glad that organizations are at these hearings and protesting and making their point known at these hearings and these affairs like this.
The challenge for Code Pink is to get people to talk about their issues rather than their tactics. So if the story that comes out of Code Pink disruption is that the prison camp in Guantanamo is still open 4 years after President Obama took office, then Code Pink wins. If the story is somebody in crazy clothes got hustled out of the hearing, then that's not really a victory. And, you know, in general, both of those things come up, and it's kind of the balance that activists have to weigh, whether the tactic is an effective way to get their arguments out.
Next up is Phoenix. We talked to George, Independent Line.
Hello.
Hi, you're on the air, George. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I think the main problem relates a lot that the demonstrators are not heard enough. And this is because the mainline media, and also C-SPAN to some extent, does not cover issues in depth. And they do not get people like Medea Benjamin to give their views very often. And the media has excluded many topics from discussion about politics and the drones and so forth. We're just not getting information out to the American public to make decisions. And the media is run by the corporations who do the advertising, and they cannot do things that go against any of the corporations that are the military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower talked about.
Thanks, George. David Marr, what do you think of George's view?
I think most media corporations in the United States exist to make a profit. And they understand that people are more likely to tune in to events rather than issues.